Welcome to season 23 of the American Woodshop. I'm Susie Phillips.
And I'm Scott Phillips. And I want to take this opportunity to thank all the viewers out there and the underwriters and all the PBS TV stations for supporting us all these years. What a wonderful time it is to work with wood and share those ideas. Now, that's what this season is all about, tool tips, and we're going to upcycle by making this project a hall tree.
Absolutely. We found this antiquing, and Scott found this hall tree, which he loves. I don't. I want something a little more classic. You think you can make it work?
I'm up to the challenge.
Okay.
Let's go have some fun.
All right.
The American Woodshop with Scott Phillips is brought to you by
Woodcraft, since 1928, providing traditional and modern woodworking tools and supplies to generations of craftsmen. Woodcraft, helping you make wood work.
Craig, from the first cut to the final assembly, providing woodworkers with products that help simplify woodworking challenges. Craig.
Easy Wood Tools, American-made tools for all skill levels. For every woodworking reason. For every woodworking age. Rycon Power Tools, Pro Tools for tool pros. RyconTools.com, proud supporters of American Woodshops everywhere.
Well, time to build a Victorian hall tree together for Susie. Something that's classic, something simple, with not a lot of flourish to it. And so to that end, we have to have the right wood for the job. And this is shellacked walnut, aged beautifully, and we're going to do some turning here in a bit, but it all starts with the wood. Here's the place where I go to get the magic for the projects. Out of my barn, I use this for my solar kiln. And what that means is, for every inch of thickness on green wood cut, it takes 2 good summers of heat in the Midwest to cure this down to about an 8% moisture content. The barn is drafty enough that it allows the air exchange, and I get a lot of natural light in here. So this is my secret place to store all the wood for most of my projects. Now, time to head inside and build that hall tree. So now, that's where the wood comes from for most of the projects. Air dried, you can't beat it. And I'm down to an 8% moisture content. And that's because there's a lot of good air exchange in there. It's a drafty old barn. Never store air dried wood on the ground, picks up moisture. Now, a minute about safety. Be sure to read, understand, and follow all the instructions that come with the tools and products you use in your wood shop. Be safe. Hearing protection, safety glasses, and I'm very sensitive to wood dust, and that happens the more you're exposed to it. And we've invested a lot of time and thought in it this year, so here's a great workshop on solutions for dust collection. Now this is a tool that really makes a difference. We're here with Chris Guerrera, Oneida Air Systems, and you guys have designed a killer tool. Describe this for us.
Well, this is our Dust Deputy Deluxe. It attaches to any wet dry vac in the industry. We provide 200 mil buckets, which is not common. Most buckets are about 70 mil. We provide all the hardware, all the hoses. It attaches directly so it moves as one unit, and we cyclone the material out so it does not get into the wet dry vac, which essentially doesn't clog the filter, doesn't contaminate the air that you breathe.
Okay, so this goes to the tool, the one on the side. That's what causes the cyclonic separation. And where's the sawdust? Zero sawdust with this. That's amazing.
99.7% effective.
Okay, and then this is its big brother called the Cobra, which is great for on the job, but also benchtop tools, router tables. I've never used anything that powerful.
Correct, very lightweight, pulsating to remove material from a filter, drops it back in a bucket. You can actually use multi-tools with this unit. It's about 3 times more CFM than your standard wet dry vac.
This is all about dust collection. So they designed my central heavy-duty metal Gorilla duct line that goes 765, keep the pipe large, and I have quick disconnect so I can use that on other tools. But you designed the system in a different way.
We designed it to go above and not on the floor for obvious reasons, for safety reasons, for organization. I like to keep the work areas really organized, and I like to use floor space utilization.
Right.
So we design them up.
Okay, well, up it goes, all right. But that's easy to do because these metal clips right here clip together, and you can slide the sleeve pipe and make it whatever length you want. My favorite thing on this, other than the remote for this, is the 3.3 micron HEPA filter. Describe why that's important.
So, we contain material, we separate it, and we give you clean air to breathe back out. So I've done some programs with History Channel on Operation Build, and the number one reason they chose us was because of the air quality. Our products separate the dust and give you clean air.
Okay, and clean air it is in the American Woodshop, which translates into better health, better finishing, because you don't have that fine dust being drawn electrostatically to your finish. What wood dust do you not want to breathe? Well, any of them. So use good dust collection, but spalted woods, woods that have started to decay, are terrible. Woods resistant to decay are really bad because of the resins in them. That's why they're resistant to decay. And any wood that has been pressure treated. So always use dust extraction or collection with that. And one other thing, tell us about where this is made.
All made in the USA.
Can't beat that.
There's a new sheriff in town, the Dust Deputy.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thanks, Scott.
For wood dust, there's always a solution. But whatever you do, wear a dust mask when you sand. That's important. Now, to make this project come together, we need to do some turning. To match the capital of that column in that form right there, well, the first thing we have to do, custom turning, but it starts with turning squares. So what I do is I use a good bandsaw with a resaw fence, and a good blade's important to be able to cut these squares close to square. But you rough them into size that's about 2 5/8 square. Now that's rough cut. And once those are cut out, then I take that to the jointer and I joint one edge perfectly straight and flat. And once that's done, I rotate that jointed surface and put it up against the perpendicular joiner fence and make another pass. And now those two surfaces are square to each other. And then from there I can take it to the planer and plane it down to a 2 1/2 inch square. And that's what I need for this project. From there, I mount it on the wood lathe. Now that is the way to make your miter squares square on the end. 2 1/2 inches square, 22 inches long, and I've mounted that between the drive spur and the live ball bearing center. I have white lines laid out, 5 1/2 inches here, that's where the seat and the drawer will go, and then right here, 2 inches to make it a decorative squared base. It goes into the pedestal on the bottom. Now I have the tool rest locked in place. Everything's secured. Lock, 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 lock. And the headstock is locked here, unlocked here. So we're ready to roll. Turn it on, I have it set to 1,000 RPM, and this is the skew. Hold it at a 90-degree angle to the tool rest, and this is the waste area, that's the square area that I want to keep. So I can work down to create a crisp shoulder so that the drawer parts can go into this square shoulder. Now, I'm all the way down, let's turn that off, and you can see I'm all the way down to this flat spot. Now watch what I can do. Those are crisp shoulders. Now, let's use the rougher right here. It's got the square cutter. And I can use this round one to create the coves. And then I can use a detailer to create the beads. Coves, caves, beads, bump. And I need to lower the tool rest so the cutting edge of this, when the shank of the chisel is on the tool rest, is right at center line. Okay, I think that's got it right there, securely locked. That looks really good. That'll do the trick. Now I knock this round, so let's get to it. I take my time. Flat to the tool rest. light cuts. Because all I want to do is turn this into the biggest possible cylinder that I can. Now, as long as the tool rest is parallel to the bed of the lathe, I can pinch a chisel like that and make that gun barrel straight. And that's smooth. Now I'll go to the round cutter. I want a little bit of a shoulder down here. And I need a bit of a cove right there. Okay, and then that's going to come up to a shoulder. And that shoulder is going to come up into a smaller diameter cylinder that is tapered. It has to have a graceful taper to match the turning on the top of the mirror that we're making this the base to for the hall tree. Okay, and so once again I'll do another little cove, and now here I can bring that to a bead, which is a bump, and then a square shoulder with the detailer right here. I can ease that right on around, never wanting to get into a bind. You always let the chisel do its cutting. And now I can taper this down to a nice graceful cylinder and do the same thing on the other end. So I'm coming down to the bottom edge of that bead right there. That looks good. Graceful. That's what Susie was looking for. And I come in with the detailer. I want that to be a crisp transition there. And I'm not getting greedy. I'm just taking nice light nibbling cuts. And I can roll that right around a graceful bead, but I need to take that down quite a bit to make it proportionate because it needs another bead here. They're going to be identical. And then that needs to carry the weight of the top of this column. I'm going to the finisher or smoother, that tiny round carbide cutter, and sweeping down. And you can see the classic form of a capital coming up right there. And so I'm going to go back to the detailer right in here. Once I get that diameter small enough, that looks good right there. And finish it off, just like that. Very graceful. That's a little bit too big. That's perfect there. I can take it down just a hair more. And turning. How small enough? That's the challenge. Because you can't put it back on. You surely can take it off. Okay, now I need to cut a tiny cove there, and then from there I'll set up dust collection, do a little bit of sanding, and I'll friction on garnet shellac, and finish it with a little bit of linseed oil. And we'll have ourselves a beautiful leg, ×2. So that's how you turn two delicate legs that match the Victorian mirror. Now, from there, it's on to S4S'ing lumber that we need to trim out this project. And when I say S4S, that means surface 4 sides. And so that means that the boards need to be flat and square. And I start at the table saw, and I work the stock down into flat work pieces. Basically, I'm using the table saw to make sure I'm getting the prime cuts of boards that are flat that I can then take to the planer. And I can plane those flat boards to a true given thickness. So that's S2S. And once I take that board over to the jointer, I can hold those plain flats against the jointer fence and make the edges, the narrow thickness of the board, perpendicular to the wide flats of the board. And when that's done, that's called S4S. Naturally, the table saw can be used to make sure that those jointed edges are absolutely parallel to each other. So from there, Let me show you how I like to cross-cut things. I'm going to get set up on the multifunction table. Square cuts are key in all woodworking, and the best way to get square cuts are with a track saw in this system. I have my layout line here and a no-tear strip on the bottom of this track. Put my layout line right there and bring up the track saw. And I have it set so when it plunges down, it just barely goes into the MDF table here. This has to be against the fence. It's squared to the track. Now let's make the cut. Now that's all the way through, and that is a tear-free cut in every way. I'll bring the track saw off, and now what I can do, literally splits the line, bring it up to my next layout mark right there, bring the edge of the track right down to it, bring the line right up. That allows for the curve or the thickness of the blade. And this locks into a V-guide pin right here, so it stays absolutely square. And this is a technique I use to cut all my work pieces to finish lanes. I've used a tapered countersinking bit to pre-drill pilot holes to fasten the now sized capital trim board to the top of the mirror, and that's nice and solid. And then what I'm going to do, I have two long running stiles, 80 inches long, 2 5/8 wide, and I put a white mark wherever I want a pocket hole so that I can put fine 1.5 inch long screws to join the stiles to the side of the mirror. And then we frame it out from there. So you take this over to the bench top pocket hole tool. I have a roller stand there. Line it up on my index mark. Cut the pocket. And I'm going to do 6 of those per stile for the mirror. And then from there, once I get those cut, I'll show you how to use dominoes for the tenons for these H braces. You can see the pockets now on the back of the stiles, and I press that stile all the way up against the capital, bring it over, and you can see this cross piece right here has 2 white lines on it. And that's for domino loose tenons, one there, one there. And to make those cuts, we'll go over to the multifunction table here, and on those white lines, I just make the domino cuts with the 10mm cutter. Secure that, bring this up. You can see the cutter there. It wiggles as you make the cut. Lay the cursor right on the line, hold it securely. Plunge it all the way in until it stops. Do the same wherever the white line is, and then you have a perfect joint. The next step is to join everything together, and I have to start with the dominoes first because I've sized the joint, meaning I've brushed glue out on all the pieces. I'm drawing it tight together, and if I did that before I had the top lined up all the way up to the capital and then pocket screwed, well, it'd be very difficult to get the clamps on properly, which is exactly what I'm going to do right now. Okay, very good. Line her all up, draw it tight, just like that. And do the same right here. And I'll let that tack for a good half an hour, and then from there, I'll flip it over and join the pocket screws together to the mirror, and then screw it from the top. Then it's on the base. I've reset my pocket hole tool so that I could cut on the 3/4 inch plywood. Now that's architectural grade walnut. Best face is up, in this case now down, because we have to build the base up to work with pocket holes, and let me show you what I'm talking about right here. These are the 1.5 inch long. This is in 1 inch thick stock. You saw us drill that earlier. And I've pre-drilled a mating hole here, and I've sized the joint with glue on the end grain here, side grain here, to draw it nice and tight. And once I have all 4 corners drawn together using the same technique, then I can join the plywood base to the inside of this frame when it's turned over, and that's secured with screws. And then I take the Victorian Chippendale inspired dragon talon legs and I fasten that to the base of this assembly. And then that gets screwed to the base of the hull tree. Well, everything is rock solid and we're running out of time. So here's the deal. This is going to be a box. And if you check this out, you can see that it has through dovetails. The way I made that was at the router table. And I used this special jig that let me cut the tails first with a dovetail bit and a special guide bushing. And you can see how that works. And then I changed the bit to a straight cutter and used the other side of the template and cut out the pins with half pins on the outside edges to balance it and have straight. And so that's the box, and it has a groove cut in the bottom, and the plywood goes in that, and that becomes a box that doubles as a seat. And also, the legs are fixtured to the base just inside of the Victorian ball and claw feet. And then the arms that I cut out at the bandsaw using a pattern, and I just stayed on the outside edge of the line. Well, those were shaped, and those will all be drawn together. And it's a million times easier to sand and finish these individual parts before it's assembled, and that's what I'm going to do. I'll have 10 hours in the finishing step alone, which I'm using a handmade garnet shellac, working with the walnut, a little bit of dye to match the original finish on the mirror. So I'll get those parts finished to perfection, and then I screw them in place, working from the base up to make it rock solid. Oh, this is exciting. Now this is how it all comes together. I just want a little bit of squeeze out on those dovetails, just like that. And because everything is pre-finished, the squeeze out actually stays on the surface. That's good, and you can scrape it right off with your finger. So that's the drawer joint, drawn nice and tight with good dovetails. And then on the back of this, I used the clamp in place pocket hole jig and drilled the pocket holes here so that I can dog in the seat board. But now what I need to do in the pre-drilled holes is bring this around, hold it, line it up, and then when it's resting nicely on the front stretcher that's joined together at the 2 posts. And to drill those holes, I drilled those at the drill press earlier using a fence, and that's how those mortise tenon joints go together, and the box sits on that. I screw the box to the back of the assembly. Then I can use the pocket holes to put the seat board that's hinged in place. And the final thing is to put the arms in using the pocket hole jig to create the pockets on the back of the post. And from there, it's on to the final review. Okay, the finishing touch here. Going back in with the shellac that has red trans-tint dye in it to do a color match of these turnings to the turnings up here. And I think you'll agree, really looks great. Comes in a bottle like this. You just mix it in the shellac and you can tone it to whatever you want. Use your artist palette technique, and there you have it, the finished hull tree. Now, through Western Ohio Woodworking Club, which I'm a member of, this will be sold at Artistry and Wood in Dayton, Ohio in November this year, and the proceeds support a scholarship, permanent endowment at Rio Grande University for woodworkers. So check that out. Great program in woodworking. Your woodworking matters. You can make it count by giving it or selling it and raising money for causes that have heart. Well, there you have it, the hull tree from the American Woodshop. stay well and stay busy in your shop. Every blessing.
Woodcraft, since 1928, providing traditional and modern woodworking tools and supplies to generations of craftsmen. Woodcraft, helping you make wood work.
Craig, from the first cut to the final assembly, providing woodworkers with products that help simplify woodworking challenges. Craig.
Easy Wood Tools, American-made tools for all skill levels. For every woodworking reason. For every woodworking age. Rycon Power Tools, Pro Tools for tool pros. RyconTools.com, proud supporters of American woodshops everywhere.
For more information behind the scenes at the American Woodshop, go to our website for complete details on tips and like us on Facebook.
Singing, hey ho, and away we'll go.